one of the things I tell my folks a lot is, you hear the old adage, it's who you know. I always tell folks, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. You really have to build your brand and position yourself, whether you're a rep, whether you're, just the creative director or the graphic artist, or if you want to position yourself and brand yourself in the community. I'm very involved in the community, as far as civic clubs. I stay involved with the governmental part because our business, we have to really work with a lot of city ordinances and that sort of thing. So when I say, it's not about who you know, it's who knows you. Is build your brand, get involved in the community, and build relationships. So when someone's thinking about, hey, can you recommend someone for, maybe a billboard campaign? Yeah, well, Bill Lodzinski, this guy's involved in this and that, and he works with me, this and that. And I think that's what I tell folks is build your brand.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours? Just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Bill Lodzinski. And Bill grew up in the Philippines and then moved to the U.S. and grew up going to 3 different high schools. Ended up going off to college and getting a degree in marketing and business. Graduated and worked for a furniture company for a period of time. Ended up having a round of layoffs and moved over to doing Billboard or being a Billboard representative. Started in sales and then sales manager and then general manager. And then a couple of years ago, did a venture out or decided to go as a venture out on his own. And then ended up after that circling back to billboards and now had an opportunity with what he's doing with the present business today. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Bill.
Thanks, Devin. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, excited to have you on and looking forward to a great conversation. So I just took a much longer journey and condensed it into the 30 or 45-second version of it. But why don't we rewind and unpack and tell us a little bit about how your journey got started growing up in the Philippines?
Yeah, as you mentioned, I was born and raised in the Philippines, moved to this country when I was almost 16. Like you mentioned, I went to 3 different high schools, lived in Michigan for a little bit. I started my high school career in the Philippines, then Michigan, and then finished it at South Carolina, right outside of Myrtle Beach. And then I went to college at the University of South Carolina. And after that, like any other young college graduate, I went out to try to make as much money as I can. I realized that, the money that they say you're going to make in college is really not what you're going to make, because you got to gain a lot of experience first and make yourself valuable and kind of earn your keep. So as you mentioned, I was in the furniture business for about 5 years, got laid off, and then somehow found my way in the billboard business.
So maybe just diving in just a little bit. So degree in marketing and business, went through college after you came to the U.S. Now, how did you go from marketing and business to working for a furniture company, or kind of what was that transition, or how'd you get started there?
Yeah, I was during college, I worked in swimming pool construction. And, I learned real quick that manual labor was not going to be a long-term thing for me. So I thought I better finish my degree. So right after college, I saw an ad looking for an account manager for a furniture company. I didn't know anything about business. When you're in college, what you learn is on paper. So, I applied, I got the job, and basically it was almost like an in-house sales position, taking orders. And this company that I worked for manufactured furniture on the wholesale side, selling to retailers. And then I moved up as the marketing director over the course of 5 years. And that's really how I got into it. And I learned a little bit of some sales acumen, but most of it was on the marketing side. And then, as I mentioned earlier, after 5 years with the furniture business being real volatile up and down, they had some massive layoffs, and I found myself unemployed, and that's kind of how I got into the industry that I'm in right now.
So no, that makes sense. So now, you come out of the furniture business, they have a round of layoffs, say, okay, still need to pay the bills, still need to be able to keep everything, the lights on, so to speak. So you jump over to Billboard, being a Billboard representative and starting out sales there. Now walk us through, because I think, you wasn't necessarily the long-term goal or plan to be a Billboard representative, but you kind of ended up working your way up there and staying in the industry for a longer period of time. So kind of walk us through a bit more of that journey.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I lost my job, and so I needed to pay the bills. I had a young daughter to support, and I saw an ad for a Billboard rep outside sales. So I'm like, you know what, I gotta have a job. So, I was a reluctant sales rep, if you will, and so I had to make cold calls, and some of these small businesses around this rural part of South Carolina, actually Orangeburg, South Carolina is the name of the town. So they send me out to all these small towns to go try to sell billboards in that area. And I found out that one, sales was, in my opinion, and my thought process, was never really what I wanted to do, because I always equated sales with like the encyclopedia sales reps that knocked on my parents' door, or the vacuum sales rep, high pressure, that sort of thing. So it's something I really didn't want to do. And I tell you, sales, those that do cold calling and sales learn real quick that it's not as easy as, just showing up. I mean, you get a lot of rejection, you get a lot of skepticism, but you just keep at it. So yeah, I had no choice. And at the same time, as I was trying to make a name for myself, I was also looking over my shoulder for the next opportunity, thinking, this is not going to be my cup of tea. But I just followed what my general manager at the time told me. It's like, hey, just show up, call on as many doors as you can, introduce yourself, and learn about their business, and see how our products can help their business. Get over the fear and just do it, and suck it up and figure it out. And yeah, it took some time, and I had to fake a lot of try to get my anxiety level down. But over time, and for a long time, I couldn't close a sale. I'm thinking, man, this job sucks. I mean, you got to make so many calls, and everyone's kicking you out the door, or they tell you they're going to buy and they don't, and it's just nothing. I don't have anything to show for it. But after several months, some of those calls that I've developed and some of the relationships I've developed by just making those calls started turning into business. You've got to go back several times, and you got to build not only your personal brand, but you got to build some consistency, so these folks know, okay, this guy really wants to help my business. And so then sales started falling into place. And as a rookie, the company had a contest on who can bring in the most sales for this one given month. And I was in it 3 months into it. And I just happened to walk into this business that was getting ready to introduce a new product line. I mean, it was a straight cold call. And I walk in, and the guy said, you know what? I just happen to have some co-op money. What do you got? And I laid out the largest program we have, and he signed it right there. It's the only time in my career that I've signed a contract on site. In the 30 years, typically you go, they got to think about it, and you got to call them, and they got to think about it. You got to resell them. You got to visit them a few times, and then they're ready to sign. This was a cold call right on the spot. So that, I won this big contest, and from there it was like, oh, you know what, maybe this is not so bad. So yeah, so that I ended up sticking with it.
Awesome. So you said, hey, this is intended originally or kind of contemplated to be a more, transitional or part-time thing, but transitioned into being a longer term, job path. Now, how long did you stay in the billboard industry? Because I think at one point you went out and tried a venture a couple of years ago. So kind of walk us through a little bit, how long you were in the billboard industry, and then what was the venture that you tried out?
Yeah, I started in the billboard business in 92. So from 92, and in the billboard business back around that time, early 90s, mid 90s, there's a lot of acquisitions. It's almost like the bank acquisitions. Bigger outdoor companies were buying smaller billboard companies. And so I was a victim of a lot of those acquisitions. So from 92 to about 98, there was like 4 acquisitions I was involved in. But I was in sales, moved it to sales manager. And then the company acquired the company that I worked for, and they retained me. They got rid of everyone else above me. Somehow they kept me. And that's Lamar Advertising. And I was a sales manager there for a couple of years. And then I had an opportunity to become a general manager in a smaller facility in Bridgeport, West Virginia. So I was in it, a couple of transfers, and then I was in Florida 1 year, and I was lured. For some reason, you get into this moment in any career where you feel like, what, I should be moving up a lot faster. And there was a couple of promotions that came through that I felt like that I was overlooked. So I decided to, I'm going to look at something else. So I decided to work for this company in Tampa, Florida. Did that for a couple of years, but I realized, you know what, the billboard industry is kind of where I wanted to be. And so through my connections, I got an opportunity to run a billboard company up in Philadelphia. So did that for a couple of years, and they were acquired, and so I moved on to another company, and they were acquired, and so I moved on to another company, and then eventually, just finally find a home. There was an opportunity with the guy that I worked for 25 years ago, who became a CEO of a billboard company, and he asked me to come work for him, and moved to West Virginia and did that for a year. And then this opportunity with West Virginia Outdoor came up to give me a chance to become a CEO of a company and really drive the growth of the company. So I would say in my 30 years of this industry, I was probably out of it for 2 years. So pretty much billboards are in my blood. So, I mean, it's one of those things, and it's been a great fit. Everything that I'm doing now, I learned through all those years of, different markets, dealing with different personnel, dealing with different clients, and really learning a lot of things, many mistakes, but also learning different approaches on how to communicate and how to really grow customers' businesses. So yeah, the journey has been great. It hasn't been static because I've been all over the place. So I think that's been really helpful in my development and growth. And really, even now, there's still things I'm learning. As it's just a constant learning process. You never get to a point where it's like, hey, I know everything, and I'm the smartest guy on the, most of the people that work for me are a lot smarter than me, and that's kind of how I like it.
Now, just to fill in a little bit of the gaps there. So, you went and worked, tried to, or went out on your own, and then ended up businesses, or going back to billboards, businesses got acquired, went through those rounds a few different times. Now, when did you, you said, you have your own employees, go doing your own business. When did you transition to doing that? And kind of what is that, or kind of what did you, or jump over to as you decided to start up your own thing?
Well, where I am now, it's not really a startup, but it's an opportunity for me to run it like my own business. I think in the past, when I worked for large corporations, they pretty much dictate how you run the company, the culture you need to maintain to a certain degree, and the trajectory of the company, whether it's growth, organic or acquisition and all that. You had someone dictating to you, okay, this is the plan, Bill. This is what we need you to do. In this particular role, it's really like owning my own company. It's like, all right, Bill, you're in charge of West Virginia Outdoor. You're at the top of the pyramid, as they told me in the interview. It's your responsibility to grow it. It's your responsibility to come up with a strategic plan. It's your responsibility to, elevate and develop your employees. This is really your baby. The shareholders are out of it. So it's really running my own business. Although, in my career, my first GM told me that, listen, the way to run a business, whether it's yours or not, is take ownership. Treat it like it's your own, because you'll make decisions based on what's in the best interest of the company, which in turn becomes in your best interest and the best interest of the employees around you. In this particular case, it is really like my own company. I get a huge chunk of capital expenditure money. I can choose where I want to develop some new billboard locations. I can define the culture of this company. I handle all the financial statements and P&Ls and where funds go and all that, as long as, the board of directors see the profit margin, the bottom line is where it needs to be. I run it like my own business. So from that perspective, I kind of see it as my own business, although it isn't, but that's the best way I've known to run a company. But here I have no strings attached to me. There's no one telling me this is the road we're going to take. I can determine which road we're going to take.
No, that's awesome. Sounds like,
yeah, as long as it's the right road. Sometimes you take, but if it's my mistake, it's my mistake. It's not going to be the mistake of others, and I get thrown to the wolves. So it's really a good setup.
No, that's awesome. And that's kind of one of the things that is the bittersweet of be able to do your own thing is, on the one hand, you make the decisions, you make the calls, and if it works out well, you get the reward, and vice versa. If it doesn't work out well, you're the one that you're the only
Absolutely.
one to blame. But it comes along and makes it nice. So that's awesome to hear. So, well, now as we've or caught up to the present day of your journey and kind of where you're at today, it's a great time to transition to the two questions I always like to ask towards the end of each episode. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I always like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what'd you learn from it?
I was thinking about that, Devin, before I came on. It's like, okay, there's really not one that stands out because there's so many little ones that I've made. So, a lot of the mistakes I made early on when running a business is being too greedy. Um, when we go out and deal with customers, we have a set price on our products, but it's always negotiable. So I've learned the hard way that I try to look it from the perspective that I want to be too greedy to where I didn't accept a certain rate and my competitor did. Although in my mind I would have taken that, but I want to get a better rate because I want to win the negotiation versus looking at it from the perspective that both parties should win. You know, if they want to go down on rate, I should be able to go down to a certain level that I think is acceptable, not to continually push it to help my margins. So I'm learning in negotiating is just always look at it from their perspective as well and try to find a compromise and really be transparent in the beginning and say, hey, listen, we want to work a rate out so it's a win-win. I learned initially it was like, no, I'm gonna try to get this rate. I'm gonna stick to this rate. And I lost a lot of business that way. And I realized, wait a minute, if I had just taken the first go around, which was acceptable really in the whole scheme of thing, that's better than zero because now I've got to prospect and find another client to fill that spot. So I think negotiating, I learned a lot. So there've been a lot of cases in the beginning, and a lot of times when I failed on those cases, I was thinking, you know what, they don't see the value in my product, and I move on, and kept that mentality for a while until I realized I'm losing a lot of business to the competition. I know you never want to drop rate, but in some cases, you don't be too greedy, and you gotta give a little bit. So I think that's probably one of the main things that I learned now. So now when I'm on the negotiating table, I'm a little bit easier, making sure that we cover our margins and our cost, and that we feel the value is worth it, because you certainly don't want to devalue it. And the customers walk away thinking, you know what, we got a fair deal, and these guys were fair enough to kind of work with us, and you just play it from there.
I think that's awesome. And it's one of those it's an easy mistake to make. You go along and you want to maximize your profits, you want to maximize the business. But on the other hand, if you're, pricing yourself out of the marketplace, or in other words, not meeting their needs, then you can, you can leave a lot of good deals on the table. And so I think it's always that balance and making the mistakes, figuring out what makes sense and doesn't make sense. So I think that's a great takeaway.
Yeah, I teach my people the law of diminishing returns. Some of them get so fixed on, I'm not going to sell this billboard for any less than this. And they stick to that for months upon months. And then they finally sell it at the rate they want. But over the last 7 months, if they had taken a lesser rate, we would have generated the revenue on those past 7 months and actually come out a lot farther ahead. Because once the month is over in billboard industry, you can't recapture that lost revenue. And that's really how we function. It's the month-to-month deal, and whatever we put in billing that month is really what makes the company run. So,
no, absolutely. So awesome. Well, now with that, the second question I always like to ask is, so now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Yeah, I think on that intro form that I did, is one of the things I tell my folks a lot is, you hear the old adage, it's who you know. I always tell folks, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. You really have to build your brand and position yourself, whether you're a rep, whether you're, just the creative director or the graphic artist, or if you want to position yourself and brand yourself in the community, I'm very involved in the community, as far as civic clubs, I stay involved with the governmental part because our business, we have to really work with a lot of city ordinances and that sort of thing. So when I say, it's not about who you know, it's who knows you, is build your brand, get involved in the community and build relationships. So when someone's thinking about, hey, can you recommend someone for, maybe a billboard campaign? Yeah, well, Bill Lodzinski, this guy is involved in this and that, and he works with me, this and that. And I think that's what I tell folks is build your brand, not only to your customers, but also to your employees. I mean, that's the key component. Get your employees to know you, get to know them and kind of position yourself so there's a trust level there, and you're just not the boss. And I think, I've always been one of those that, my leadership approach is always leading to serve. It's never going to be about me. It's going to be about the people underneath me, because if you take care of those people, they're eventually going to take care of you. So that's how I do it. So yeah, I always try to get involved. I stay involved with my employees. I make the rounds every morning. That's kind of my thing. I talk to the guys in the back. We have an operations crew that go hang the billboard. We got a sales team, and then we have our administrative team. And so I just make it around. I know, how many kids they have, the name of their kids, what they did this past weekend, and they do likewise. So I think that's critical. And then let your customers know. I try to call our customers. I'm not involved in the sales process like I used to be. But I check in on our customers every now and then to make sure, we're doing the right thing and that we're meeting their expectations. And if there's any problems that we can address. I know my salespeople hate that because they're like, man, you're just opening up the door. You call these people, they're going to unload on problems with you. Well, first of all, if we're doing what we're supposed to do, there should be no problems. And then two, I think it just shows a lot of character and care on our part by checking in. Because if there is a problem, we want to resolve it. Because I've learned in this business that people will leave you dissatisfied, but they'll never communicate that dissatisfaction, and you'll never learn from it. So it's always better to just go find out if we're doing something wrong. Let's see what we can do to correct it.
No, I think that's definitely a great piece of advice and a great takeaway. So, well, now as we're wrapping towards the end of the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Yeah, I mean, you can go on our website, wvoutdoor.com. You can go, you can check everything you need to know about our company, and there's a section there that shows our team. My mug is right there. Yeah, my email address. So yeah, that's really the best way. Our phone number is on there. It's the best way to reach me. And listen, I've been doing this for 30 years, a little over 30 years. I'm always opening to mentoring young business owners or folks that want to get into either sales or any kind of business. Because I think, that's where a lot of our younger generation that have a lot of talent and are a lot more technically savvy, and they just have so many resources in front of them. I think they can learn from folks that, even though I'm old school, they can still learn a lot of things that could help them in their process. And a lot of times when I do talk to younger folks, I learn a lot from them as well. It's amazing just from, how they view the world and what their value system is and what's important to them. When I was younger, money was the key. I want to make as much money as I can. I want to have a nice house, nice car. Nowadays, they just want to be valued. They want to have good, work-life balance. They want a quality of life. Their mental health issues are a big concern. They like PTO. They want time off to pursue their thing. So it's a different value system. They want to put in the time, but they're not going to sit there like I did, work on Saturdays and, late into the night. And that's not a negative. It's just they've realized that at a young age that, those things are valuable. I mean, I kind of think that way now. I don't work 60 hours a week. I could if I wanted to, but I don't. It's not where I've been down that road. And I think you miss a lot of opportunities. My kids are all grown, and I look back and I'm like, if there's some Saturdays I wish I can get back. So no,
Absolutely.
I get it. You do your work, you do the best work you can, and you do it within the time that you're given. And if you put everything you got into the company and put the value that you have to offer, I think it all works out.
Awesome. No, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that's definitely encourage people to reach out, make a new connection, and if nothing else, make a new best friend. So with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you, the listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review, helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And on that note, if you ever need help with along your journey with patents or trademarks or anything else with your startup, your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thanks, Devin. I appreciate you having me.